Your car finished charging almost 3 hours ago. That was the first lie Cynthia Parker told me while holding a phone 6 inches from my face. It was 6:38 on a Thursday evening at Oak Haven Estates, and I had just crossed the clubhouse parking lot toward my dark gray Mustang Mach-E when Cynthia stepped between me and the charger. Unplug your car. Now. Her voice carried across the asphalt. A sprinkler hissed behind the clubhouse. Somewhere near the pool gate, a kid dropped something metal and it clattered against concrete. I stopped. Cynthia stood beside my driver's door in white slacks and a pale blue blouse, blonde hair perfectly arranged despite the August humidity. Her white Tesla Model Y was parked 2 spaces away. Her phone was already recording. "You've been occupying this charger for hours after your car finished," she said. I looked past her. The charging cable was still connected to my Mach-E. The station's green status light pulsed steadily. "Charging. Not finished. Cynthia, move away from my car. I'm documenting this." "Okay." That answer seemed to bother her. She expected an argument. Instead, I pulled out my phone. A notification sat on the lock screen. "Charging complete. Received 6 minutes ago." I opened the charging app. Session started. 4:11 p.m. Charging completed. 6:32 p.m. Current time. 6:38. 6 minutes. Not almost 3 hours. I took a screenshot. Cynthia lowered her phone slightly. "What are you doing?" "Saving the timestamp." "The timestamp doesn't change the fact that other residents need access." "I agree." "Then unplug." "That's why I'm here." Her mouth tightened. "You've done this repeatedly." "Done what?" "Abused community charging." That phrase landed differently. Not parked too long. Not forgot to move my car. Abused community charging. It sounded official. Cynthia liked words that sounded official. She chaired Oak Haven's Sustainability Committee, which mostly handled recycling reminders, landscaping recommendations, and the 2 Level 2 chargers the HOA had installed beside the clubhouse that spring. Somewhere along the way, Cynthia had started treating those chargers like they came with her name on the electrical panel. I stepped around her. She followed with the camera. "I'm submitting this to the board." "Submit the whole video." "What's that supposed to mean?" I pressed the release on the connector. Beep. The green light went dark. I coiled the cable back onto the station. Nothing. I opened my driver's door. Cynthia pointed toward the charger. "You were plugged in for nearly 3 hours." "That's not what you said." She froze. "What?" "You said I'd been finished for almost 3 hours." Her eyes flicked toward her phone. For half a second, neither of us spoke. Then she recovered. "You know exactly what I meant." "Maybe. But I also knew exactly what she had said." I got into the Mach-E and closed the door. Before pulling away, I looked at the screenshot again. 6:32, 6:38. 6 minutes. At the time, it felt like nothing more than proof that Cynthia was exaggerating. I didn't know yet that 6 minutes would become the first entry in a digital trail, and that every accusation she made after that would come with a clock attached. Before Cynthia Parker started timing my charging sessions like she was running airport traffic control, the chargers had been the least interesting thing about Oak Haven Estates. That was exactly how I liked them. My name is Daniel Brooks. I was 43, and I'd spent most of my adult life working as a commercial building systems technician. Access controls, HVAC automation, electrical monitoring, the invisible equipment nobody notices until something stops working. My job taught me one habit that followed me everywhere. Trust the log before the argument. Machines don't remember things the way people do. They record them. I bought my dark gray Mustang Mach-E the previous year, and when Oak Haven installed 2 Level 2 chargers beside the clubhouse that spring, I thought it was a smart improvement. Nothing dramatic. Plug in. Charge. Get the notification. Move the car. For the first month, that was exactly how it worked. Then Cynthia appointed herself guardian of the electrons. Technically, she chaired the Sustainability Committee. At first, her involvement seemed helpful. A laminated notice appeared between the chargers. "Please move vehicles promptly. After charging." Fair enough. There were only 2 stations. Nobody wanted a fully charged car sitting there all night. Then another notice appeared. "Be considerate of waiting residents." Still reasonable. Then Cynthia started watching. I'd pull into the clubhouse lot and see her white Tesla Model Y nearby. Sometimes she sat inside it. Sometimes she stood beside the chargers checking the screens. Sometimes she photographed cars. The first time I saw her do it, I assumed there had been a problem. The second time, I started wondering. The third time, I realized the problem was Cynthia. One Saturday, I was unplugging my Mach-E when she approached carrying a stack of laminated cards. How long were you here? I glanced at my phone. About 2 hours. That's too long during peak periods. I looked around. The second charger was empty. What peak period? She ignored that. We need residents to exercise judgment. Is there a time limit? There shouldn't have to be. That answer stuck with me. Not because it was rude. Because it wasn't a rule. Over the next few weeks, Cynthia's reminders became more specific without becoming more official. She posted in the neighborhood group about charger abuse. She left notes under windshield wipers. She started using phrases like fair use compliance and community charging standards. I checked the HOA portal. Nothing. No published maximum session. No 2-hour restriction. No formal grace period after charging ended. Just general language asking residents to move vehicles promptly when charging was complete. Most people didn't challenge Cynthia. They unplugged, moved, avoided the conversation. I understood why. Sometimes surrendering 10 minutes is cheaper than arguing for 20. But Cynthia seemed to interpret every retreat as confirmation that she had authority. And authority, real or imagined, has a way of expanding when nobody asks where it came from. By the time she confronted me that Thursday evening, she wasn't asking residents to be considerate anymore. She was documenting violations. At least, that was what she called them. The problem was that every time my Mach-E connected to that charger, the system created something Cynthia's laminated notices couldn't change. A start time, a completion time, a notification, a receipt, a record. Cynthia was watching the chargers. She hadn't realized the chargers were keeping track too. The first warning arrived Monday morning at 8:13. I was standing in a mechanical room downtown, listening to an air handler vibrate badly enough to shake dust from the ductwork, when my phone buzzed. Oak Haven Community Notice. I opened it expecting landscaping or pool maintenance. Instead, I saw my name. Daniel Brooks. Repeated extended occupancy of community EV charging equipment after charging completion. I read that sentence twice, then a third time. The notice said management had received documented reports showing my Mach-E remaining connected after completed charging sessions. Attached was a photograph. My car. My license plate. Charging cable connected. Timestamp. Saturday, 5:18 p.m. I knew that session. I still had the receipt. I opened the charging app. Saturday. Session started. 4:02 p.m. Charging completed. 5:41 p.m. Unplugged. 5:49 p.m. I looked back at Cynthia's photograph. 5:18. 23 minutes before the car had even finished charging. I laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because the accusation was so confident. I took screenshots of the session history and replied to management. The attached photograph was taken while my vehicle was actively charging. Please compare the photograph timestamp with the charging completion record. Then I attached both. Their response came that afternoon. Thank you. We will review the information. Cynthia's response came faster. She caught me Tuesday evening near the mailboxes. You disputed the warning. I corrected the timeline. You're missing the larger issue. What larger issue? She folded her arms. Your pattern of excessive charger use. How long is excessive? Her eyes narrowed. We've already discussed this. No. You've complained about it. She stepped closer. The issue has been documented. There was that word again. Documented. I looked at her phone. Not recording this time. At least not visibly. Then the documentation should match the charger. Cynthia gave me a tight smile. You always have an excuse. A timestamp isn't an excuse. She walked away before I could say anything else. 2 days later, another complaint appeared. Another photograph. Another claim that my Mach-E had remained connected well beyond reasonable charging time. I checked the app. Again, the photograph had been taken during an active session. That was when irritation became suspicion. Cynthia wasn't checking whether I had finished charging and then documenting an overstay. She was photographing the car first, then describing the photograph later as proof of whatever she wanted it to prove. So I created a folder on my phone. Oak Haven Ev. Every session went into it. Plug-in time. Charging start. Completion notification. Unplug time. Receipt. Screenshots. No editing. No guessing. Just chronology. Friday evening. I connected the Mach-E to charger 2. Beep. The ring around the station turned green. At 6:04, I looked through the clubhouse window. Cynthia was outside. White Tesla behind her. Phone raised toward my car. Click. She took the photograph before my charging session was even halfway finished. I watched her lower the phone and walk away. That was the moment I stopped wondering whether Cynthia was documenting violations. She wasn't. She was collecting pictures and counting on nobody checking the clock. The next time Cynthia pointed her phone at me, I almost gave her exactly what she wanted. It was Tuesday evening. Hot. Still. The kind of August heat that made the clubhouse pavement smell like warm rubber and baked concrete. My Mach-E was connected to charger 1. Green light pulsing. Beep. The station screen refreshed. Active session. I had come outside because the app showed the battery was getting close to my target charge. Cynthia was already there. Of course she was. Her white Tesla sat near charger 2, but it wasn't plugged in. She stood beside my Mach-E with her phone raised. You've been here long enough. I stopped 10 feet away. Is my car finished? That isn't the point. There it was again. Whenever the facts got inconvenient, the point moved. I checked my phone. Charging. Still active. I'll move it when it's finished. You don't get to decide how long everyone else waits. I looked around. Charger 2 was empty. Nobody's waiting. I'm waiting. For what? To use this charger. I pointed toward the empty station beside her Tesla. There's one. I prefer this one. For a second, I honestly thought I'd misunderstood her. You're filing complaints because you prefer charger 1? Her phone moved closer. Don't twist my words. My jaw tightened. I had spent all day troubleshooting a building control network that kept dropping communication between floors. I was tired, hungry, and about 3 sentences away from telling Cynthia exactly what I thought of her little enforcement campaign. Then I noticed the red recording indicator on her screen. She wasn't trying to understand me. She was collecting a reaction. Behind her, the charger beeped again. I looked at the display. Elapsed time. Energy delivered. Session active. Numbers. That sound changed something. Not in Cynthia. In me. I lowered my voice. What time do you believe my charging ended? She blinked. What? You're recording. So say it clearly. Her expression shifted. You've been occupying the charger excessively. That's not a time. You know what you're doing. I took out my phone. Screenshot. Current session. Screenshot. Current time. Screenshot. Battery status. Cynthia laughed. This is ridiculous. No, I looked at the green light. This is a clock. She stopped smiling. That night, I created a spreadsheet. Nothing complicated. Date. Plug-in time. Charging start. Charging complete. Unplug time. Complaint time. Photograph time. I downloaded every session receipt still available in my account and matched each one to the screenshots I'd saved. Then I created a folder for Cynthia's complaint photographs. One by one, I entered their timestamps. A pattern appeared almost immediately. She wasn't photographing my car after charging ended. She was photographing it whenever she saw it connected. Sometimes 30 minutes before completion. Sometimes an hour. Then later, those photographs became evidence of an overstay. The image stayed the same. Only Cynthia's description changed. I sat back and listened to the refrigerator hum. This was familiar territory. In building systems, when somebody says equipment failed at 8 o'clock, you don't argue about memory. You pull the event log. You build the sequence. Then you let the clock tell you what happened. From that night forward, I stopped defending myself. I started building a timeline. Cynthia had her photographs. I had something better. Chronology. The photograph Cynthia labeled 72-minute overstay had been taken 32 minutes before my car finished charging. I found that out at 10:46 on Wednesday night. My kitchen table was covered with charging receipts, screenshots, printed HOA emails, and a legal pad filled with times. The air conditioner clicked off. The house went quiet. I opened Cynthia's newest complaint packet on my laptop. For photographs. Each one had a caption. The third showed my Mach-E connected to charger 1 beneath the clubhouse lights. According to Cynthia, the picture proved my vehicle remained plugged in 72 minutes after charging completion. Photo timestamp, 7:14 p.m. I opened my session history. Charging started. 5:36 p.m. Charging completed. 7:46 p.m. Unplugged. 7:53 p.m. I stared at the numbers. Then checked them again. 7:14, 7:46. Her photograph wasn't 72 minutes late. It was 32 minutes early. My car was still actively charging when she took it. I pulled up the notification from that evening. Charging complete, 7:46 p.m. Then the receipt. Same completion time. Then the screenshot I had taken when I unplugged. 7:53, 7 minutes. Not 72. I printed everything. The printer hummed beside the refrigerator. One page. Then another. Cynthia's photograph. My session receipt. My completion notification. My unplugged timestamp. I placed them in chronological order. 7:14, 7:46, 7:53. That was the entire story. No raised voices. No opinions. Just 3 times. The next morning, I emailed the property manager. I didn't accuse Cynthia of lying. That mattered. People get defensive when you tell them what somebody intended. So I stayed with what I could prove. The photograph identified as evidence of a 72-minute post-charge overstay was captured 32 minutes before charging. Completion. Attached are the corresponding session records. I sent it. At 11:08, management replied, "Thank you. This discrepancy will be included in the review." At 11:21, Cynthia emailed me directly. "You are deliberately manipulating technical details to avoid the real issue." I read that sentence twice. Technical details. She meant time. I replied, "Which detail is incorrect?" No answer. That evening, I plugged into charger 2. Beep. Green light. Cynthia's Tesla was parked nearby. She came out of the clubhouse carrying her phone. This time she didn't photograph my car. She looked at me instead. "You think this proves you're entitled to monopolize community equipment? No, you're making this much harder than it needs to be." I checked the charger screen. Active. Then looked back at her. "I'm checking the times you submitted." Her face tightened. "There are broader community standards involved." "What standards?" "You know exactly what I mean." I did. The timeline had failed her. So the argument was about to change. That night, another email arrived. Cynthia no longer focused on how long I stayed after charging ended. Now she claimed Oak Haven had a strict maximum charging session. 2 hours. I searched the HOA portal. Nothing. Then I opened the laminated charger notice Cynthia had attached as proof. "Please limit charging when others are waiting." No 2-hour maximum. No board resolution. No enforcement language. I leaned back in my chair. First she had changed the timeline. Now she was changing the rule. The clock had already contradicted her once. Next, I was going to find out whether the rule existed at all. The 2-hour rule existed in exactly one place. On Cynthia Parker's laminated sign. I confirmed that Thursday morning. At 7:26, before leaving for work, I logged into the Oak Haven resident portal and downloaded every document related to the EV chargers. Board minutes. Sustainability committee notes. Parking policies. Community equipment rules. Installation announcements. I searched one phrase. 2 hours. Nothing. I searched charging limit. Nothing. Maximum session. Nothing. The only official language I found said residents should move vehicles promptly after charging completion when others needed access. That was etiquette, not a 2-hour limit. So I emailed the property manager. "Please provide the board-approved policy establishing the 2-hour maximum charging session referenced in the complaint against me." I expected to wait all day. The response came before lunch. No board-adopted 2-hour maximum could be located. Attached was the same laminated notice Cynthia had already sent me. "Please limit charging when others are waiting." I stared at it. There was no number. No penalty. No enforcement language. No 2 hours. That afternoon, Cynthia sent another message. "The 2-hour charging standard has been communicated to residents and is enforceable through the Sustainability Committee." There it was. Not suggested. Not recommended. Enforceable. I replied with one question. "Please identify the board meeting where that enforcement authority was approved." She didn't answer. Instead, I found her beside the chargers when I came home. Her white Tesla was connected to charger 1. Green light. My Mach-E wasn't charging. I was just walking from the mailbox. "You've been contacting management behind my back," she said. "I've been asking for the policy. You're trying to undermine the committee. I'm trying to read the rule you say I violated." Cynthia folded her arms. "It's posted. The sign says nothing about 2 hours. It says to limit charging. That isn't the same thing." Her expression hardened. "Everybody else understands it. Then why did you add a number that isn't there?" For a moment, the only sound was the low electrical hum from the charging station. Then, beep. Cynthia glanced toward her Tesla. I noticed something. A laminated card was clipped beside the charger. New. 2-hour maximum during high-demand periods. I walked closer. At the bottom, in smaller print, Oak Haven Sustainability Committee. No board approval date. No policy number. No effective date. I photographed it. Cynthia stepped toward me. You don't have permission to photograph committee materials. It's posted in a community parking lot. You're proving exactly why enforcement is necessary. I checked the timestamp. 6:17 p.m. saved. That night, I compared the new sign with the copy management had sent that morning. Different wording. The 2-hour limit hadn't merely been unsupported. It had appeared after I asked where it was written. I saved both versions. Original notice. New notice. Management email. Cynthia's enforcement claim. Chronological order. Then I noticed something else in the complaint photograph Cynthia had submitted earlier. Her white Tesla appeared in the background. Same charger. Same parking position. One photograph was time-stamped 4:36 p.m. Another, 7:02 p.m. I didn't have her private charging records. I didn't need them. Her own photographs showed the Tesla sitting at the same charger more than 2 hours apart. Maybe it had been charging the entire time. Maybe it hadn't. I wasn't going to claim something I couldn't prove. But Cynthia had created a simpler problem for herself. If merely occupying a charger beyond 2 hours proved a violation, her photographs raised the same question about her. I closed the laptop. The argument had changed again. First, Cynthia said I stayed too long after charging. The timestamps disproved that. Then she said charging itself was limited to 2 hours. The records disproved that. Now she had posted the rule after the dispute began. And her own evidence was about to force one question she couldn't avoid. Did Cynthia's rule apply to everyone? Or only to me? The white Tesla wasn't proof that Cynthia had broken her own rule. It was something more useful. A question. I spent Saturday morning reviewing every photograph she had submitted with the complaints against me. Not her private account. Not her charging history. Just the evidence she had voluntarily sent to management. Photo 1. My Mach-E connected to charger 1. Cynthia's Tesla sat at charger 2. Timestamp. 4:36 p.m. Photo 2. Different angle. Same vehicles. 5:11 p.m. Photo 3. The photograph she claimed showed my 72-minute overstay. 7:14 p.m. And there, in the background, was the same white Tesla. Same charger. Same parking position. I zoomed in. Then stopped myself. I couldn't prove Cynthia had been charging continuously. Maybe she unplugged and reconnected. Maybe she moved and returned to the same space. Maybe the photographs simply made it look that way. I wasn't interested in building my case on assumptions. Cynthia was. I wasn't going to become Cynthia. So I printed the photographs exactly as submitted. Underneath each one, I wrote only the timestamp. 4:36, 5:11, 7:14, nothing else. Monday morning, management sent notice of a formal HOA review meeting. Thursday, 7 p.m. Clubhouse conference room. The board would consider Cynthia's complaints, my responses, and the Sustainability Committee's authority regarding charger use. That last part mattered. This wasn't just about whether I had stayed plugged in too long anymore. Now somebody was finally asking who had the authority to decide what too long meant. That evening, Cynthia intercepted me near the chargers. Her Tesla was parked across the lot. No cable attached. You've turned this into a board issue, she said. You filed the complaints. You could have followed the rules. Which version? Her face tightened. I immediately regretted the sarcasm. Not because it was wrong. Because I didn't need it. I had documents. She had reactions. I wasn't giving her one. Cynthia stepped closer. The 2-hour standard applies to everyone. I looked at her. Everyone. Yes. Good. Something in my answer made her hesitate. What does that mean? It means we agree on one thing. Which is, if there's a rule, it applies equally. She stared at me for a second, then walked away. Wednesday night, I built one final timeline. No dramatic graphics. No accusations. Just a clean sequence. 7:14 p.m., Cynthia's photograph. 7:46 p.m., charging completed. 7:53 p.m., vehicle unplugged. Then the policy documents. Original laminated notice, no 2-hour limit. Management confirmation, no board-adopted 2-hour rule located. New laminated notice, 2-hour maximum, posted after I challenged the complaint. Then Cynthia's photographs. 4:36, 5:11, 7:14, white Tesla visible each time. I placed one question beneath them. Does the 2-hour standard apply to every resident? That was all. I closed the laptop. Outside my kitchen window, Oak Haven was quiet. Porch lights, dark roofs, the faint blue glow of the chargers beside the clubhouse. Cynthia thought Thursday's meeting would decide whether I had abused community equipment. But that wasn't the question anymore. The real question was simpler. Could one committee chair invent a rule after a dispute started, call it enforcement, and apply it selectively? By Thursday night, Cynthia wouldn't have to answer me. She would have to answer the clock. 72 minutes, Cynthia said. That's how long his vehicle remained at the charger after it finished. She said it confidently. That was important. Thursday night, 7:08 p.m. The Oak Haven Clubhouse conference room smelled like coffee, carpet cleaner, and somebody's takeout pizza. 3 board members sat at the front table with the property manager. About a dozen residents filled the folding chairs behind us. Cynthia sat across from me. White blazer. Printed complaint packet. Phone beside her right hand. My laptop stayed closed. Board President Mark Reynolds looked at Cynthia. And you're certain about 72 minutes? Yes. I wrote that down. She continued. She described repeated charger abuse. Unfair occupancy. Residents being denied access. Then she introduced the second part. Community charging is limited to 2 hours during high-demand periods. Mark glanced at the property manager. Is that board policy? It's an established sustainability committee standard, Cynthia answered. Again, I wrote it down. When she finished, Mark turned toward me. Daniel. I opened the laptop. I only want to check the timeline. The projector came on behind me. White screen. Black numbers. Photo, 7:14 p.m. I displayed Cynthia's photograph. My Mach-E, cable connected. Green charger light visible. This is the photograph identified as proof of the 72-minute overstay? Cynthia nodded. Yes. I clicked once. Charging complete, 7:46 p.m. The room went quiet. Then, unplugged, 7:53 p.m. I looked at the board. The photograph was taken 32 minutes before charging ended. I unplugged 7 minutes after completion. Mark leaned toward the screen. 7 minutes? 7. Cynthia shifted in her chair. You're focusing on one session. I'm focusing on the session you identified. I clicked again. The original laminated notice appeared. Please limit charging when others are waiting. No 2-hour limit. Then management's email. No board adopted 2-hour maximum located. Then the newer sign. 2-hour maximum during high demand periods. Management sent me the original notice Thursday morning. I said. This new version was posted that evening, after I requested the policy. One board member frowned. Who authorized the change? Nobody answered. Cynthia finally spoke. The committee has discretion to manage charger use. Mark looked at the property manager. Does it? Not to create enforceable penalties without board approval. Silence. I had 1 slide left. 3 photographs Cynthia had submitted herself. For 36, 511, 714. Her white Tesla appeared beside the other charger in all 3. I didn't accuse her of charging continuously. I said exactly that. These photographs do not prove Cynthia violated anything. She looked surprised. Then why show them? Because Cynthia just testified that simply exceeding 2 hours at a charger violates a rule that applies to everyone. I pointed toward the timestamps. Her own evidence shows why we need actual records before making that accusation. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Mark closed the complaint packet. The board dismissed the warnings against me. They also suspended enforcement of the committee's 2-hour notice pending adoption of an actual charging policy. Cynthia stared at the projector. 7:14, 7:46, 7:53, 3 timestamps. 7 minutes. Not 72. She had spent weeks trying to make photographs louder than the system that created the charging record. But clocks don't care about confidence. And that night, neither did the board. 3 weeks later, the most important thing beside the Oak Haven Clubhouse wasn't a car. It was a sign. Not laminated. Not handwritten. Not clipped to a charger by Cynthia Parker. A real HOA sign. Community, EV charging policy. I stood beside my Mach-E reading it while the August evening settled over the parking lot. The policy was simple. Residents could use either charger while actively charging. When charging completed, the driver received a 30-minute grace period to move the vehicle. If demand increased, the board could establish posted session limits. Complaints had to include verifiable times. And any change to enforcement required board approval. At the bottom was a QR code linking to the same policy on the resident portal. One rule. Same version. Everyone. I almost laughed. After weeks of emails, photographs, warnings, and Cynthia's imaginary 2-hour standard, fairness turned out to be surprisingly boring. That was exactly what it should have been. I connected my Mach-E. Beep. The ring around charger 1 turned green. Charging started. I looked at my phone. Timestamp. For the first time in weeks, I didn't screenshot it. I walked toward the clubhouse. Then I heard tires behind me. Cynthia's white Tesla rolled into the lot. She parked beside my car. For a second, neither of us moved. Then Cynthia stepped out. No white blazer. No complaint folder. No phone held up like a badge. She looked at my Mach-E. Then at the news sign. Then at me. The second charger available? I glanced at it. Looks like it. That was all. She backed her Tesla into the space, opened the charge port, and connected the cable. Beep. A second green light came alive. 2 cars. 2 chargers. No argument. A week later, management sent the final notice regarding my case. All previous warnings connected to Cynthia's complaints had been removed from my account. The Sustainability Committee could still recommend conservation and charging practices, but it couldn't create penalties or enforcement standards without board approval. Cynthia remained committee chair. I was fine with that. I never wanted her removed. I wanted the rules to stop changing depending on who was standing beside the charger. Something else changed too. Residents started using the stations more comfortably. Nobody hovered. Nobody photographed license plates. Nobody treated a charging cable like evidence of wrongdoing. If both stations were occupied, people checked the status board or came back later. It worked because everyone finally knew what counted. One evening, I unplugged 7 minutes after my completion notification. Same 7 minutes that had once become Cynthia's supposed 72. I coiled the cable onto the station. Cynthia was walking toward her Tesla. She glanced at me. "You know," she said, "the 30-minute grace period is probably too generous." I smiled. "Bring it to the board." She stared at me. Then, surprisingly, she smiled too. Fair enough. I got into my Mach-E. In the mirror, I saw the 2 chargers glowing beneath the clubhouse lights. Green. Quiet. Ordinary. Cynthia had thought those chargers gave her authority. They never did. What they gave us were timestamps. Records. A way to separate what someone claimed happened from what actually happened. And that was the lesson I carried home. Justice doesn't always arrive with sirens, lawyers, or somebody shouting louder than everybody else. Sometimes it arrives as 3 numbers on a screen. 7:14, 7:46. 7:53, 7 minutes. Not 72. And once the clock told the truth, nobody got to rewrite it.